Have you ever just looked at someone and thought, I do not understand you at all? Or, wondered why you react to things in a way that feels completely different from everyone around you? Well, what if I told you that those differences aren't just random? That they actually follow predictable patterns? That's exactly what the legendary psychologist Carl Jung proposed, and today, we're going to dive into his incredible framework for understanding personality.
I mean, really think about it. Why does your friend just light up being the center of attention at a party, while you'd much rather have a deep one-on-one conversation in a quiet corner? Or why is one of your coworkers all about hard data and logic, while another one just goes with their gut feeling? These aren't just little quirks, you know? Way back in 1921, Carl Jung basically said, hey, this isn't random at all. He argued that all these variations in how we're wired fall into predictable patterns, a system he called psychological types. Now, his goal wasn't to shove people into boxes, not at all. It was more like he was offering us a map to help navigate the super complex territory of the human mind. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the two big attitudes that kind of direct all our energy. Then, of course, we'll get into the famous duo, the extrovert and the introvert. After that, we'll look at the four mental tools we all use to see the world, see how it all comes together to paint a picture of a personality, and then we're going to get a little mysterious and explore your unconscious shadow. All right, first things first, let's talk about the most basic building block in Jung's entire system, the two fundamental attitudes. This is all about where your energy naturally wants to go. So Jung called this your attitude type. And he used the word libido here, but not just in the way Freud did. For Jung, libido was our general life force, our psychic energy. So your attitude type basically describes whether your energy naturally flows outward toward the world or inward toward your own inner world. And this one little distinction is the foundation for your entire relationship with reality. Pretty big deal, right? And this, of course, brings us to the two terms that everybody knows, extroversion and introversion. It's all about that fundamental flow of energy we were just talking about. Okay, so here's the core difference. The extrovert's focus is on what Jung called the object. That's just his fancy term for the external world of people, places, and things. They orient themselves by it, they get energy from it, and they pour their energy back into it. The introvert, on the other hand, takes what he called an abstracting stance. That just means they instinctively pull back from the world to process it through their own internal, subjective viewpoint first. Jung had this absolutely brilliant metaphor to explain this. He saw the extrovert as prolific, kind of like a plant that survives by spreading its seeds far and wide through tons of relationships. The introvert, he said, is more like an animal that survives by conserving its energy, building a strong, safe den, gaining by monopoly. And it's so important to get this. Neither one is better than the other. They're just two different and totally valid strategies for getting through life. But here's the thing. Knowing whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, that's only half the story. To really get the full picture, we have to understand the specific tools your mind uses to deal with the world, the four mental functions. Jung called this a function type. His idea was that while we all use four main mental functions, each of us has a favorite, one we rely on more than the others. Think of it like being right-handed or left-handed. Sure, you can use your other hand, but your dominant one is just stronger, more skilled, and it's your automatic go-to. So this table breaks it all down. Jung split the four functions into two pairs. On the left, you have the rational or judging functions. These are your decision-making tools. Thinking analyzes with logic. It asks, is this true or false? Feeling evaluates based on values. It asks, is this good or bad? Then on the right, you've got the irrational or perceiving functions. Now, irrational here doesn't mean illogical or crazy. It just means it's not based on reason. It's about how we take in info. Sensation tells us what is right now through our senses, while intuition gives us a hunch about what could be by seeing patterns and possibilities. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when we combine an attitude, like extroversion, with a dominant function? Well, you get this incredibly rich, detailed portrait of a personality type. Let's look at a classic example, the extroverted thinker. For this person, their go-to function is thinking, and they aim it outward at the objective world. Their whole life is basically built around one goal, making reality fit into a logical, intellectual formula. You can picture an engineer designing a perfectly efficient bridge, or a legislator trying to create a universal set of laws. The formula, built on hard facts, is king. So consciously, this person lives and breathes by their intellectual conclusions. They can be amazing reformers and organizers, creating order out of chaos. But, and this is a big but, it comes at a cost.
To serve that formula, they have to push down anything that gets in the way, especially messy things like personal feelings. This can make them seem rigid or cold, because to them, the objective formula is just more important than subjective feelings. Make sense, right?
But what happens to all that stuff that gets repressed?
It doesn't just disappear into thin air. Nope. It gets shoved down into the unconscious, where it forms what Jung called the shadow. And this, my friends, is where things get really fascinating. Jung believed the psyche is always trying to find balance. So, for every function that's super developed and conscious, its exact opposite gets pushed into the unconscious. And down there, it stays inferior. Now, let's be clear. Inferior doesn't mean bad. It just means less developed, like a muscle you never ever use. It's raw, it's primitive, and it operates completely outside of our control. Okay, let's go back to our extroverted thinker. Consciously, they are all about being rational, impersonal, and fair. But their unconscious shadow, that's their inferior feeling function. And this shadow is the total opposite. It's incredibly personal, it's oversensitive, it can even be petty and suspicious. This is why a person who seems so logical can suddenly get super defensive over a tiny personal comment or blurt out something shockingly tactless. That's the primitive, unconscious feeling just erupting from the shadow. And really, this is the main takeaway. Jung's framework was never meant to be a bunch of rigid labels to trap us. It's so much more than that. Think of it as a dynamic map of your own mind. It shows you your conscious strengths, sure, but it also shines a little light on the undeveloped parts of yourself, your shadow. And for Jung, real growth was all about turning around, facing that shadow, and integrating it to become a more whole, balanced person. So that leaves us with a pretty deep question to think about. If you consider your own natural, dominant way of being in the world, what might its opposite be? What part of you is kind of left in the shadows, just waiting to be explored? Because according to Jung, that's exactly where your greatest potential for growth is hiding.